Heyo everyone, it's AJ, and today I am making a bold argument for if Bungo Stray Dogs Season 4 is going to adapt a light novel at the beginning of the series, like they have done for like Season 2 and 3, that it is going to have to be the third one. And I know you're probably thinking, wait, why? Especially when I am a very bold lover of other stories. However, I should also state for the fact that my arguments will spoil the manga and whatnot. So, if you're just an anime only person, be warned, I'm going to talk about what happens potentially in Season 4. So, there's your warning, because, yeah. So, if you don't know what the third light novel is about, basically, the third one is called The Untold Origins of the Detective Agency, and basically discusses how the ADA came to be. The first little chunk of the story actually begins the night before Ashise is actually hired into the ADA. Like, he does his entrance exam, like, dealing with the bomber that is Tanizaki. And it starts off with Tanizaki and Kudakira, like, in the cafe, just talking and working things through, and then Dazai just goes, "Hi! By the way, you know how we, like, somewhat rescued / not really arrest that were-tiger? Yeah, we're gonna hire him. So, we need to make up an entrance exam. Hey!" So, the first kind of chunk of that is essentially them working out how they're going to come up with this entrance exam, which then leads them to the terrorist, like, theme. But one of the points that was brought up very early on was, how did the ADA come to be? Because they just know that Fukazawa, like, started it like a decade ago, essentially, like, because he was inspired by somebody, but it doesn't really talk about it, because they don't really want to prompt Fukazawa, because frankly he has a menacing aura and you don't really want to mess with him. Which is very, very fair. So that is the premise of the majority of the rest of the book. It's basically a flashback to how Fukazawa then created the ADA. And it's him and Ranpo's relationship and how it grew and whatnot. And this is why I think this is probably the better light novel to go with, because if Season 4 is going like through the manga, which I think it is given by the trailer, we're going to have the little mini Ranpo and Po like mystery that starts off the arc. So why not have a flashback story that revolves around Ranpo, which would then give a nice smooth transition from the beginning of him becoming the greatest detective to then move into him moving into a very highly detective story. That alone makes sense. And given the fact that this story is about how the ADA came to be, the upcoming arc is literally about essentially soiling the name of the ADA and basically everyone turning on to the ADA. So basically it almost trying to get torn apart, essentially. Because if you've seen the trailer, obviously you see that Dazai gets arrested and there's lots of things that happen, unfortunately. But through circumstances that they don't control, everyone ends up hating the ADA. I'm trying to do light spoilers. I don't want to try and go full on spoiler territory, because I know there'll be some people that, despite they've only watched the anime, have probably still continued on at this point. So, hi. I'm not going to be super spoily. I'll try to be nice that way. But that's where my line of thinking is here's the creation, here's somebody trying to destroy it. The other option would be 55 minutes, that light novel, but I feel like it's a bit too separated from what could flow into a nice season, because through the backstories of like the Dark Era and 15 Years, it kind of helps you understand the characters a bit better, whereas 55 minutes is kind of more like a wee... This probably sounds a wee bit stupid to say, but it's kind of like a side adventure. You know, like Dead Apple is kind of like a side event that just somewhat kind of happened to happen. It doesn't really have any kind of historical context for the world because it's happening like present day, if that makes sense. Whereas obviously Dark Era happened years before. Obviously 15 years was obviously more than that. But why not have another historical kind of plot line which blends itself nicely into what will be the present arc? What more can I say? If you haven't read it, by the way, go and read it. It's a good story. Also, I feel so bad for Ranpo. Honestly, my heart just breaks for him even more. It's also just funny to see the fact that Fukazawa, who is a like highly trained martial artist who's basically been like an assassin and shit and killed people and whatnot and has like a strong mental like durability and everything like that, gets broken by a wee kid. Because Ranpo was like 14, 15 or something like that in the story. Like, I was about to say he's a wee Wayne. He's a teenager. But still, a teenager nevertheless. And an orphaned one at that. So, it's heartbreaking reading, like, his wee story. And it's like, oh, which would then be perfect because obviously, as Bungo, is here to break your heart. And why not have, like, two heartbreaking backstories, because there's a good chance that we'll have a certain other person's tragic backstory. I will not spoil that, but yeah, if you know, you know. God, that's going to be so hurtful to watch. But yeah, given that the story ends with Fukazawa creating ADA so that Ranpo can have a job. Oh god, just the fact just saying that is just hurtful. Yeah, so because Ranpo then gets like tagged as the greatest detective ever within this story, it makes sense for us to go into a big plotline where his detective skills are highly needed. And the other backstory kind of leads into that one, and in a sense. So it ties in nicely with the arc of what would be season 4, or what should be season 4. Plus, it also gives you a chance to see another character again. Like, I remember when I first read it, and in the beginning of like the backstory, Fukazawa is dealing with an assassin, like an assassination attempt. So there's an assassin like kind of tied up with a bag over his head and whatnot. And see when it was revealed that it was fucking Oda. Oh my god. I had a fucking heart attack. So that is also something very handy that they could have, because people like Oda despite that he only really appears in the light novels. He's made a huge impact in this series despite he's dead. So why not bring back a character that's dead, even though he's like a Wayne at the time, or like a teenager. So that is like, so you went like reading that and then how it all ties in, because obviously see just before he goes and dies, like he bumps into Ranpo and Ranpo tells him obviously not to go because then he'll die, but it is like they've already crossed paths before and it's crazy. Not that maybe Oda like maybe realised, because he was too busy dealing with his job and Ranpo wasn't any kind of threat. Like, he was just a wee kid in the office just being like, oh yeah, so this happened, and bloody bloody blah. But yeah, why not bring back a character that people seem to like? So there we go. That's my wee argument for why it makes sense that if season 4 is going to have a light novel adaptation at the beginning of the series, it has to be the third one. Especially when like I said, it goes into a Ranpo arc, like, to start off season 4, like, for the present day. So why not have his backstory, essentially, for being becoming the greatest detective, and how the ADA came about, to then for someone to try and destroy it. It just makes sense. Does that actually make sense? Like, do you agree? Like, let me know down below. Or do you think I'm completely wrong? Do you think it actually should be like 55 minutes? Or do you think it should be one of the other ones? However, please do not say Stormbringer, because there is no way they could adapt that in like a couple of episodes. There is no way. That book is way too fucking thick. That needs a movie and a half. I think Stormbringer could be its own series. Like, that could have, like, I would honestly not be surprised if you could make a 12 episode core out of that, honestly. So much happens in that series. But anyway. So, like I said, let me know down below your thoughts. Like, do you think season 4 will do the whole trend of doing a wee light novel at the beginning? Or do you think they'll just dive straight into the whole arc so that they can try and cover as much as they can in one season? Because we're going into a very, very essentially long, convoluted arc. So, what do you think? But anyway, until next time, I'm AJ, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.